Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'anite.com. Today is Friday the 21st of January 2022 and we're going to press on with this series of surahs between 50 and 114. I don't know if you can hear it, but if you can, there's drilling going on in the house. There's nothing I can do about it, and if I wait for it to finish, I don't know when I'll make this video, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So we're looking at Surah 93 and we're just going to press on and look at it. So it opens, by the morning light and by the night when it shrouds in darkness. Now, as anyone who's watched any of this series will know, there are a lot of oaths, especially in this section between 50 and 114 that we've been looking at. And where they occur, they invariably reference what's coming. And so what we have here is by the morning light, the thing which happens in the morning, the beginning of something, and the night when it shrouds in darkness. So obviously this is the end of something, the close of something. So you have a beginning and an ending. Okay, so it's setting that up. It's not just that there's an oath and then, whoops, we're going to talk about something else. No, it's always relevant to what's following. And so what follows? Thy Lord has neither forsaken nor loathed thee, and the latter will be better for thee than the former. The latter will be better than thee for the former, or alternatively, the hereafter will be better for thee than the present life. And so there we are. We go back to the opening oath, by the morning light and by the night when it shrouds in darkness. So you have something that we can relate to, something which we see every day, the beginning of the day and the end of the day, and then we have this, as it were, the kind of expansion or extension of that. The latter will be better for thee than the former. You see, so it's always, as I've mentioned many times, human beings are the only creation of God, so far as we know, with the ability to extrapolate, to read from, to perceive symbol. I think that's it in a nutshell. To understand subtext, to see beyond that which is, to see that which it implies. And this is the very capacity which mankind is encouraged to use in the Qur'an, and quite frankly, I mean, without being too horrible about him, which the traditionalist, certainly the religionist, not only in what I call brand Islam, but pretty much across all sort of what I would call sort of system religions, really hampers that. It wasn't always the case. It's not always the case. It's something that's quite new. I mean, of course, it's true that the Catholics hardly encourage the reading of the Bible by the sort of laity, but at the same time, there was a spirituality implicit within the medieval system, because every man had his place. He knew what he was. He wasn't running after Kim Kardashian or thought that he was, somebody that he wasn't. He was born into a particular role. He was a carpenter or a carpenter's son, and therefore his son would be a carpenter. He knew what he was, and certainly it was a hierarchical society. But any man who belonged to the guilds and was a carpenter or a leather worker or a stonemason was as proud of his position and knew what his position was every bit as much as a lord or a king or anybody like that. It's only now in what I would, what the Hindus refer to as the Kali Yuga, in the Dark Age, the Iron Age, this age, which is really depraved and disgusting, debauched. It's only here that we've lost all of this. We've lost any sense of where we belong. So all that to say, it's any of these kind of trying to transpose these traditional religions in their traditional contexts, whether it be Catholicism from what was Christendom onto the modern context, or what was Islam in what was Islam onto the modern context, is ridiculous. Whether it's the Catholic trying to do it, the proselyte, or whether it's the sort of dawah crazed jihadi, the fact is that the societies in which either of these systems operated is not only is it gone, it's never coming back. It's precluded by modernity, and the idea that we can just take the bits that we like from modernity, well, the internet's quite handy, we'll have that. And I quite like air conditioning. I think that's good, we'll keep that one. And yes, the ability to order pizzas online, I think we'll have that. To keep all of this stuff, and then to just kind of say, oh yes, but we want to import, be it notions of Christendom or notions of Islam, into something which has this is delusional. And the people at the top, they know this. Absolutely, they know this, because they designed what we're living through. But they're using, whether it be Catholicism or Islam, as just further wrecking balls or sort of wedgies that they can just throw the new levels of atomization and disintegration at, in order to kind of drive a wedge further into whatever was left of this traditional system. Anyway, that sounds a bit depressing. It is. There's nothing you can do about it. What you can do is to improve your own purity, your own taqwa, and basically to operate as something of a kind of I don't know, almost like some sort of dissident within the broader society, because that's all that's left to us at the moment. Anyway, I'll press on with this. And the latter will be better for thee than the former, and thy Lord will give to thee, and thou wilt be satisfied. So obviously this is directed in the first instance, and quite clearly, to the recipient of the Qur'an. I don't go into this an awful lot, but I think it would be possible to construct something of a life of the Prophet Muhammad from the Qur'an. There are certainly clues in there that one could put together into a narrative. That would be a very interesting project. I'm not personally it's not high on my list of things to do, but I think that would be very interesting. But what would be most interesting about it is how obviously this would be at odds with the story that the traditionalist Muslim has for us, which derives entirely from another literature, and that would be perhaps okay if this other literature comported fundamentally with the book that it claims or he claims as his foundational scripture. But it doesn't. It simply doesn't. And I'm not here to kind of have a go at him, or he's welcome to believe whatever he wants. He's got to answer for that on the Day of Judgment. I really couldn't care less, or at least I couldn't care any more than I do about Scientologists or Jehovah's Witnesses, or Freemasons, or people people who believe the current errant nonsense of materialism and so-called progress and all of this. They stand on their own works, and they stand on their own faith and their own deeds on the Day of Judgment, as do I. So it's not that I'm gunning for him per se, it's just that he does insinuate himself between the reader and the text, and as such I do have to kind of address that. Anyway, let's continue. Yes, where were we? Let's just continue a little bit. And thy Lord will give to thee, and thou wilt be satisfied. So quite clearly, initially, the recipient of the Qur'an, Muhammad, was he was not, he wasn't satisfied, and he didn't have enough. Let's continue. Did he not find thee fatherless and give shelter? Okay, so that's another clue. This is something else that we find out about the recipient of the Qur'an. He was fatherless, and then God gave him shelter. Verse 7, and find thee astray and guide. Oh dear. And find thee astray and guide. So, I mean, I didn't write this book, so if you have a problem with it, please do take it up with the author. But it clearly says this. This isn't, dependent on the Sam Gerrans translation or anything like this. And I have a note here, which I'm going to try to read if I can see past my other camera, from my broader work, which we're reading from here, the notes of which are all in the back. And you can read for free, because thanks to Brother Said Mirza, we have all of this online as part of my Qur'anite site, which is reader.qur'anite.com. And the great thing about that is that all of the notes, because just as a bit of a backstory, it was quite difficult, like putting this together to get everything within 1,200 pages. And the only way to do that was to put all the notes together at the back. It's just no other way of doing it. I know, because I really tried. I spent weeks on just learning that wasn't possible. all that to say that the next best thing was to have all of the notes in line online. And that, if you go to reader.qur'anite.com, you'll find all of that. And here we are in Surah 93, verse 7, note number 1. Click on note number 1, and it drops up underneath. And it's the same for all of it, all of my work there. So the note is the assertion that messengers of God were sinless, which the traditionalist claims, is comprehensively undone. The Qur'an is clear. The recipient of the Qur'an was astray and then guided. There's no getting out of this. You see, you can't have both. You can't claim the Qur'an is your foundational scripture and then go off into an over the hills and far away sort of extrapolation, which on the basis of something else, and have both. You can have, well, you can't even really just have one or the other, because you're a bit stuck, aren't you? Because if you can't just say, well, we want the hadith without the Qur'an because the hadith claim the Qur'an, you're in a bit of a similar situation to the Christian, to some extent at least. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but it's a bit the same insofar as, I mean, if you've got people like Marcion, right, who in the early Christian days, he basically said the Old Testament God and New Testament God, completely different gods. So we don't need the Old Testament God, because he believed in the God of Paul and the God, to some extent, of Jesus, but he disavowed, the Jehovah of the Old Testament. So he just went full bore, and that's it. And if you read people like, I don't know, what's he called, Augustine. He started off on that line, and then he met Ambrose of Milan and changed his view and became a Catholic. So all that to say that the Christians kind of are in a similar situation. They need the Old Testament because the Old Testament is supposed to sort of substantiate what's called the New Testament, but to some extent they don't really want that, because there are bits which don't comport with a lot, especially the more modern versions of Christianity, which are all about feelings. Really, they're kind of socialism with the scripture, kind of gush my feelings, with a Eucharist. So they're really stuffed. And by the same token, by the way, I'm not saying that's true about all Christianity or all Christianity full time, because it isn't. But it is definitely true of a lot of Christianity, certainly in later years. Especially in the sort of Calvinistic reinterpretation that you get in America, a lot of it to do with personal wealth and all the rest of it. All that to say that the traditionalist Muslim is in a bit of a similar situation, because he has to keep the Qur'an, otherwise his hadith don't have any authority. And his problem is that the Qur'an and the things which he prefers, the hadith, are fundamentally at odds. And to kind of break it down to its simplest terms, by way of comparison with Christianity and the Hebrew Scriptures, the Hebrew Scriptures are very clear. Well, they say quite a lot of different things, but they're very clear, certainly in some places. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God. There you are. There you have it. That's an unambiguous statement. And yet, when you get into the whole thing about Christianity, it stands or falls on the exceptionality of Jesus. And without that, why aren't you just following the Hebrew Scriptures? It needs the exceptionality of Jesus, and yet that is contradicted by very clear statements in the Old Testament. And so you reach a similar situation of tensions, and that's what the traditionalist has here. That's why I address it. It's not that I'm particularly interested in his constructions. He's welcome to them. He's got to answer for them. I don't. I'm just explaining why I don't accept them. Anyway, let's continue. Yes, and find the astray and guide. So quite clearly, as heretical as this would be to those who prefer other literatures to the Qur'an itself quite clearly says that the recipient of the Qur'an was himself astray and that God guided him. And I don't have a problem with that. We're all astray and been astray to some degree, and we read multiple times in the Qur'an that if he's whom God guides, he's guided. So God either guides or he doesn't. Why would that be different in the case of Muhammad? Unless, of course, you want to create some cult of the personality and detract from the power and glory of God, and some degree arrogate that to a man to some degree. Ergo, what I was talking about Christianity just a moment ago. To continue, and find thee astray and guide, and find thee in need and make sufficient. So quite clearly he was lacking in something, and was made sufficient again by God. And this is a characteristic we see. God says throughout the Qur'an that he is sufficient, you're not. God either gives or he doesn't give. We have this concept of rizq, of this provision, and so on. So why would it be any different in this case, unless of course you're making a man into something more than a man? And of course Traditionalist Islam is a very broad church. Let's not forget that. It's not like it's this monolithic thing and everybody agrees on everything that they believe. That's certainly not the case. But it is also true that some parts within it, some strands within it, certainly arrogate to Muhammad honours which the Qur'an denies him. Just can't get out of that one. It is what it is. To continue. And as for the petition, then as for the fatherless, oppress thou not, and as for the petitioner, repel thou not. So clearly, this relating to former positions that Muhammad himself was. He was fatherless and he was a petitioner. And the word here for petitioner, as-sa'il, is the asker, one who begs. I mean, it can have to request and to ask. It has both those meanings. Certainly, it's used in both senses in the Qur'an. Make of that what you will. And as for the favour of thy Lord, recount thou. So here, Muhammad is a recipient of this, as somebody who's benefited, who's been blessed with the beneficence of God and has experienced it personally. It's in the ways that we've summarised here. He's experienced, both the morning light, the beginning, and the night when it shrouds in darkness. Both ends, both the bookends of the blessings of God. He is supposed to use that as a platform of experience and knowledge and a basis for compassion from which to then reach out to other people. That's the plain meaning of the text, in my opinion. I hope that it's been of some benefit to those who've taken the time to listen to it. I hope everyone is well, and that's all for now. If you're listening on YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an and all other work free using the button in the top right-hand corner, or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop-down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Qur'an-alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop-down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.